Hi, it's Bob Nagin, and in this episode of Real Retail TV, I am going to share my predictions for the future of small to mid-sized, independent brick and mortar retail. So as someone who lives in the world of small to mid-sized independent brick and mortar retailers, I'm going to tell you that I believe the future of independent retail has never, ever been brighter. I believe that the competitive advantages that the chains had, that the department stores had, yes, even that Amazon has been diminished, if not eliminated, in that small to mid-sized brick and mortar independent retailers have advantages that all of the categories that I just shared don't have. And what that means is a resurgence of greatness, that in 3 to 5 years, independent brick and mortar retailers are going to be the first choice, not an afterthought. So what gives me this confidence to stand in front of you and say that a small mom and pop store, or let me change that, we don't call them mom and pop stores anymore. The era of mom and pop are gone. Mom and pops, when people think of mom and pops, they think of homey, friendly, but they don't think of sophisticated. They don't think of cutting edge. They don't think of good. So we're not going to call them mom and pops. We're going to call them independent. So what makes me so confident that there's going to be this amazing resurgence in independent retail? Well, here's what I think. I think that this pandemic, although it has created incredible pain, and although it has not been easy, and although it has taken a lot of businesses down, I believe that the businesses that have survived are better equipped and more resilient than ever. I believe that independent retailers have access to skills and technologies that they have never had before. So when you take those things, access to skills and access to technology, and couple them with creativity and originality, you have a combination, you have a recipe for real success. Let me break that down for you for just a moment. So when we talk about access to skills, I'll just share my own story. When I started the Mackinac Kite Company all those years ago, there wasn't even a book on how to run a successful retail store. You know, I had to figure it out. Everybody who opened a store in those days had to figure it out. Some people worked for bigger retailers and acquired some skills that way. But for someone who just had a passion for their product, me and kites, all of my friends who had boutiques, who loved fashion, who started women's clothing stores, we just had to figure it out. We just had to talk to friends. It was a slow slog, and it was difficult to get to the place where you became successful without going broke first. But that's not the case anymore. If you have access to the internet, you have access to skills. I'll just use our company, Whiz Bang Retail Training, as an example. If you have if you are starting a store, or if your store is struggling, you can get free information from us. You can invest in products and programs that will accelerate your learning curve and bring you to success so much more quickly. Our retail mastery system will take years off your learning curve. The Retail Sales Academy can get your team ready to sell in a customer-focused way. So products and programs, free and paid, they're all there for the independent retailer who wants them. And here's the thing about retail. You better be good or you're going away fast. So if you're struggling right now and you don't get skills, you're going to go away pretty quickly. If you start and you don't get skills, you're not going to last long. But the beautiful thing is that the skills are readily available. The second thing is that independent retailers now have access to technology, which they never had before. 10 years ago, if you wanted to build a website, any website, it cost you tens of thousands of dollars. You were often held hostage by a web designer who didn't really understand your business. To put e-commerce into your website was a nightmare. But the technology is simple. It's not necessarily intuitive, but it can be done by an independent retailer, by a small independent retailer. During this pandemic, especially during the quarantine, I saw people grow as much in 6 years as they would have grown in 6 months as they would have grown in 5 years without being forced. People who never really cared about their online presence all of a sudden got really serious in a big hurry. People who might have had a website but no e-commerce presence got really serious in a hurry. So all of a sudden having that web presence and having a great web presence is accessible. It's doable. Independent retailers are now selling socially on social media. It used to be only QVC and the Home Shopping Network were selling, via streaming. During this pandemic, again, so many of our retail community made it through the quarantine by learning how to sell on social media live. Comments sold has added a whole nother dimension to it. So now what do we have? Now we have a business that has a brick and mortar store that is being run professionally. They have an online presence and an e-commerce presence that is professional and brand consistent. They're selling via social media, professionally. All of these things are all coming together. I call it omni-experiential. There's another great piece of this technology that in the past only the big boys had. And what I'm talking about here is having access to sophisticated professional inventory planning. When I used to order, I would walk around my floor with a legal pad and look at the pegs and look in the stock room, and that's what I would buy. If the peg was low, I would buy. Then you got point of sale systems that would give you reports, but the reports didn't give you the accurate and timely and sophistication that was really needed to manage your inventory like pros. But now you can hire, an independent retailer can hire a company like Management One who uses machine learning and artificial intelligence to create plans for small to mid-size independent retailers that are as sophisticated as the plans that the big boys use. So you see, the technology is now in our hands too. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about this thing called COVID wisdom. One of the things that I see happened is that a lot of people living through this quarantine realized that they weren't happy with the life that they were leading. That they realized that they wanted to do something else. That they realized that they wanted to pursue a dream. And often that dream means a store, right? So somebody who has skills, somebody who is sophisticated, somebody who has already experienced real success in their career decides to change and decides to pursue a dream. It could be that they want to open, it could be the typical story. The quilter opens a quilt store. The fashionista opens a women's boutique. The bike aficionado opens a bike store. The kite flyer opens a kite store. It could be, but they're bringing a set of skills to their small, new, independent retail store that typically didn't go into the opening of an independent store. So what you're going to see is an explosion of new stores. An explosion of new stores that are run by people who have a real high degree of sophistication and skills. And finally, I want to talk about the real thing that makes me excited. So now, all of a sudden, you're going to start to see more stores, new stores, good stores, sophisticated stores being run professionally. But I also think that what you're going to see now is stores with soul. That all of a sudden, the people who have left, everybody who's made it through the quarantine, and all of a sudden this pandemic is going to end, and there's going to be this explosion of creativity, of originality, that everybody who was in business before the pandemic is going to take the lessons that they've learned during the pandemic, and they're going to apply it to a post-pandemic independent retail business that is just an expression of love, of an expression of their creativity, an expression of their originality, and Amazon is never going to be able to build a deep personal relationship. The big brands, though they might be able to emulate it, will never be able to create that genuine originality that comes from somebody who's got a store and they love what they do and they've got the skills to express it. That's what I talk about with a store with soul. Pat Boone, way in the back in the day, sang Tutti Frutti. And it was a good song, but it had no soul. Little Richard, who wrote Tutti Frutti, sang Tutti Frutti, and it had soul. So what we're going to see in my prediction is that you're going to see a whole lot of Tutti Frutti with soul on the main streets of the world. That, all the big brands are going to give you their pale imitations, their Pat Boone imitations of what's going on Main Street. That when retail looks for the future, they're not going to look to Amazon, they're not going to look to the e-commerce brands, but they're going to look to the downtowns. They're going to look to the strip centers. They're going to look to the people who know how to curate. They're going to look to the people who know how to craft. They're going to look to us. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here to tell you that the future belongs to small to mid-sized brick and mortar retailers. And that's my prediction, and I am sticking with it, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, there you go. There's my little rant. So, if you disagree with me, by all means, put it down in the comments below. If you like what I have to say, please let me know in the comments below. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear what they are too. So anyway, I'm Bob Megan. Those are my predictions, and we'll talk to you next week.